from a strictly Islamic perspective, you're fucking up already, 'cause I hear instruments. Well, hello everyone, Hagbard Celine here on a Saturday afternoon, and I'm gonna keep this one brief. This is a real documentary that is about how Muhammad was a feminist. I couldn't make this up. I'm frankly not that talented. So, without further ado, I bring you Muhammad, the true feminist.
Islam does give women rights. Over 1400 years ago, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, received the Holy Quran as a revelation.
Or, 1400 years ago, a man from a prominent family in the region realized that he could potentially use Abrahamic religion to his advantage. Or whatever it is you were going to say.
That not only acknowledged women's rights, but protected those rights.
Sure, the right to be sold off by your father, or the right to be a slave. I mean, you know.
Women did have a role in politics during the time of the Prophet Muhammad. There was a female Sahaba, Salama, or a female companion of the Prophet, who did provide consultation for him.
Well, if that isn't the weakest endorsement I've ever heard. First and foremost, those people were only even remotely respected because most of them were first-generation converts. Second, you'll have to explain to me the hadiths that say a nation that appoints a woman as its ruler shall never prosper, and when the worst among you are your rulers, the rich among you are your miserly, and the affairs of the state are entrusted to women, then the inside of the earth is better for you than its surface.
Women also had the ability to vote during the time of the Prophet.
Well, that's a pretty bold lie, considering the fact that the concept of the right to vote had hardly been established, if at all, in 700 AD. Subjects of rulers tend to not be allowed to vote at all, dear.
Which is prior to the women's suffrage movement of the 20th century, where women only recently began to get their right to vote in the 1920s, 1940s, 1970s.
Then how exactly would you explain the plight of women under Islamic rule today, as opposed to, the 1970s, the 1920s?
The women's suffrage movement.
For the sake of time, we're just going to skip this portion. Let's just say he conflates the concept of suffrage as spread in Western democracies with a single vote that I can only find a couple of minor records on, that took place in a time of great strife when they were deciding whether to go to war or not. Moving right along.
Women were degraded by most ancient cultures. The Romans, the Greeks, Persians, Arabs. Arabs actually considered having a female baby a bad omen, and some of them used to bury female babies alive.
And now we have come to seriously the only goddamn thing that has ever been done in the name of Islam that was positive. It is essentially the only thing. They say that old Arab nations used to bury and kill their infant children. And as I've said previously, this is spread across many Asiatic regions. It's not new. So now that we've conflated that all of the ancient world apparently hated women, always has and apparently always will, in spite of ancient female rulers and yada yada yada, let's just move right along, shall we?
Then suddenly someone came along to tell women, you are equal with men before God.
Of course, that's only before God. It has absolutely nothing to do with the court systems, your responsibilities to your husband, your sexual liberation or freedom. No, just before God. On earth, you're fucked.
You are equal with men before the law.
Sure, if you consider needing two women to speak in the place of one male witness, then sure, you're completely equal before the law. And in that case, why don't we just equalize things and move black people back to being 3/5 of a vote?
That was an incredible paradigm shift. Islam tells women they are equal with men but different.
Yes, the old separate but equal line, eh?
They can do some things better than men, and men can do some things better than them. You complement each other.
This is not equality. This is known as complementarianism. It doesn't fully function.
Me being a Muslim makes me a feminist.
This from a talking trash bag.
Because I believe in women's rights. And any Muslim man should be, in that definition, he should be a feminist too. There shouldn't be any fear or favor when it comes to granting the rights that Allah has given us. As a Muslim woman, it is particularly important to me that every sector of society has the rights that God has given them. These are literally God-given rights.
Oh, sure, I agree. It's absolutely your God-given right to wear a beekeeper suit to prevent you from being harmed by that dangerous male gaze.
And there are countries in our societies where that's not happening. And in those societies, we should be calling for those rights to be given. It doesn't make us feminists necessarily, but it means that we are Muslims who are aware of our rights as Muslims. And when people look at Islam, they often cast Islam, again, you've got that symbol of Islam as the ultimate oppressive religion to women.
I think we're just gonna pause for a moment and look at this woman in a beekeeper suit telling me that she's not oppressed, that this offers her some sort of freedom, and that her religion is based on giving rights to women.
And people always ask this question, then in that case, why are so many women becoming Muslim? Why are so many women willing to subject themselves to this oppressive religion and subject themselves to this oppressive scarf and all this kind of thing? And very much for those people, it is about changing your lens. Because you see oppression where others see freedom. You see liberation where others see shame. And for anybody who is looking at Islam and wants to know, what is the Islamic take on this? Why is this happening in Muslim communities? Our answer is always go back to the Quran. Go back to the Quran and go back to the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Okay, let's take your advice here. And I go to Quran 4:11 and I see Allah commands you as regards to your children's inheritance to the male a portion equal to that of 2 females. In 282 we see, and if there are not 2 men available, then a man and 2 women, such as you agree for witnesses, so that if one of the women that is, errs, the other can remind her. You see, because women are weak-minded, according to the Prophet of Mohammed there. Also, from the Quran, 2:23, we have, your wives are tilth for you, so go to your tilth, have sexual relations with your wives, in any manner so long as it is in the vagina and not the anus, when or how you will, and send your offspring before you and for yourselves, and fear Allah, which, is basically the whole point of this religion. Further from the Quran, and exemplifying the fact that women are essentially chattel, also forbidden are women already married, except those captives and slaves whom your right hands possess. This is further clarified in 3350, where he explains that, after you've paid the mahar and you have the captive slaves and all, that's fine. It also then explains that you're completely open to marrying the daughters of all of your aunts and uncles, which I think I covered in my last video. All those wonderfully genetic, experimentational first cousin marriages that turn out in great little abominations. Oh, it also gives Mohammed one of those special little privileges, which is having sex or taking as a bride a woman who is otherwise a non-Muslim.
For me, I came from a feminist background. I was raised pretty much in a feminist household.
Now, far be it for me to call you a liar, but you're a fucking liar.
And it was the personage of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his manner, the way he was with wives, children, companions.
Once again, for the sake of time, let's fast forward and just say that she's essentially saying that Muhammad did nothing wrong ever. While also saying constantly that for some reason there are societies right now where girls are less than boys, even though the majority of those are indeed Arabic or Muslim countries. But whatever. Here, this is where it gets interesting again.
Who used to say, when he was asked, who do you love from amongst the people? He would say his wife's name, before anybody else's name.
Yes, we get it. He really loved that little 9-year-old girl.
He was a feminist. If anybody was a feminist, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, according to my definition, he was the ultimate feminist.
Then he passed by the woman and said, O women, give alms, as I have seen that the majority of the dwellers in the hellfire were women. They asked, Why is this so, O Allah's apostle? He replied, You curse frequently and are ungrateful to your husbands. I have not seen anyone more deficient in intelligence and religion than you. A cautious, sensible man could be led astray by some of you. The women asked, O Allah's apostle, what is deficient in our intelligence and religion? He said, Is it not evidence of 2 women equal to the evidence of 1 man? When they replied in the affirmative, he said, This is the deficiency in their intelligence. Isn't it true that women can neither pray nor fast during their menses? The women replied in affirmative. He said, this is the deficiency in her religion. Feminism.
In the last sermon Prophet Muhammad gave before he died, he mentioned that men should treat women kindly and that they should treat them well because women are their partners and their helpers.
Funny, the one I find says, treat women well, for they are like domestic animals with you and do not possess anything for themselves. From Muhammad's farewell sermon.
And that was his last sermon before he died. That was the last message he was ever going to give anyone. And that was part of his message, that you must treat women kindly. And so obviously that's a very big part of religion. If that's in his last sermon, that's the last message he'll ever give the Muslims who are alive then.
Yes, correct. The message of women as guardianship chattel was the last message he left. Fantastic. From here, it's essentially reduced to this one woman story about how Islam saved her marriage and made it stronger because it taught her her role in the household and her role in life to her husband. Yeah, really fucking enlightened there, isn't it? That'll do it for me, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed this cringeworthy experience of the Prophet Muhammad being compared to any sort of women's enlightenment movement. Yeah, I do a lot of anti-feminist videos, but that's actually because I think women are equal, and I know for a matter of fact that, Islam does not treat women as equals. If that were the case, we would probably be able to find a little bit more evidence of that being the case, would we not? That's all, and I will be back on Monday. Have a good one.